Subaru having recently announced its goal of having 40% of its global vehicle sales comprised of hybrids and EVs by 2030, it's about time the company got around to actually putting some out, and it finally has with the simultaneous launch of its first two hybrid models, the Impreza-based XV crossover and this, the Forester, a model I know well from having owned two earlier examples of in the past.
Now on the surface at least, this new hybrid model doesn't really look all that much different to the standard 5th generation Forester model. Apart from a little bit of extra bright work with some chrome trim pieces on this base model and some E-Boxer badges, blink and you'll miss it.
On the inside, it's all much the same as in the normal model as well, aside from a couple of extra displays showing you when it's running on petrol and electric power, and a different climate control panel with buttons for heated seats, which were certainly welcome while filming this in the depths of winter. It's the same incredibly roomy, comfortable, and undoubtedly well-made interior you get in the regular model. I like this base L version's cloth seats, and the fact it still features the very clever facial recognition system that automatically remembers things like your seat and climate settings and monitors your eyes to make sure you're looking at the road ahead and not down at your phone. However, I don't like its pathetically small 6.5-inch infotainment screen, which just feels out of place in this otherwise pretty specky interior. Step up to the S model I've also spent some time with though, and you'll get a bigger 8-inch screen with TomTom sat-nav included, along with leather upholstery, a big sunroof, a powered tailgate, and of course some flashier wheels. But this, again, all mirrors the regular Forester range, and all the real changes that are going on here are under the skin.
We've only got a 2-litre petrol engine under the bonnet. It is a direct injection flat 4. Makes 110 kilowatts and 196 newton meters. Those are power outputs that would have been fairly competitive 15 years ago maybe, but now it really feels a bit under-engined when you give it a boot full. As for the hybrid system itself, you've only got a 12.3 kilowatt electric motor, which also makes 66 newton meters. There's no total combined power output that's claimed, just because it's kind of hard to calculate with this style of hybrid system. It does have Subaru's famed rally-developed symmetrical all-wheel drive system as well, with the power sent to all 4 of those wheels through a CVT. For a reasonably heavy car, it really just doesn't feel like enough grunt to get it going. The normal 2.5 litre petrol-only Forester, which is naturally aspirated, that already feels a little bit on the downside when it comes to power, but this thing with only a 2-litre engine and not really all that much in the way of electric assistance, it really does just lack that grunt that you want when you bury your foot in the carpet. Now, yes, the electric motor does give it a little bit of extra zing when you give it a boot full, but it's the same sort of zing as if you put a single chili seed in a massive paella. It just kind of gets lost inside the whole thing, and you don't really feel all that much of it. You can detect that it's there, but it's very vague. The other thing about this hybrid system as well is that it's not actually that much more fuel efficient than the normal 2.5 litre Forester. I mean, in that you're talking about 9 litres per 100 with that 2.5 litre petrol. In this, I'm getting about 7.9.
Worth noting though is that from crunching the numbers, the fuel economy improvement I saw is in line with Subaru's claims of a 19% improvement in urban environments and a 9% improvement on the combined cycle, although I'm not entirely convinced that's enough of a saving.
Now, the biggest problem is the fact that the electric motor just doesn't make enough power to allow the car to drive on electric power only as much as you'd like it to. Where this only makes 60 odd newton meters, in a Toyota you'd get an electric motor that makes 160 odd newton meters, which actually allows you to drive up to 40 k's an hour or so on electric power only. And while Subaru claims this thing will be able to do that, I found it tries to kick the petrol engine in at more like 7 k's an hour or something like that, and that's if you're being really delicate with the throttle. Give it any sort of vigor and it'll just fire the petrol engine back into life. So really, you've got to look at this as working more like a mild hybrid system than a true hybrid system, as the only time it really shuts off the petrol engine when you're driving is when you are coasting down hills. And that, of course, helps save some fuel, but it doesn't help save quite as much as if it was able to drive on electric power only around town more than it actually can. Hybrid system aside though, and this applies to all Forester models, it's really, really comfortable in here. I think the ride quality is perfectly suited to Australian roads. I've never felt any sort of harsh bumps or anything like that really being transferred through to the cabin. It must be said that it handles remarkably well for what it is too. I mean, it's not the sharpest steer in the entire world. It's a mid-size SUV, so of course it's not going to be. But for what it is, it's very impressive. Of course, you've got the boxer engine up front, which helps keep the centre of gravity lower, and you've got the battery pack in the back, which I think would help out with weight distribution a bit in this hybrid model, I'm guessing. But the biggest advantage you've actually got comes from the suspension. It's got fairly conventional McPherson struts up the front, but it actually has double wishbone suspension in the back, which is a bit odd for a family SUV, but it helps it display really good body control. Tiny little bit of initial body roll as you turn into a corner, but that's only really on the sharper bends. Through these sweepers, it feels really nicely balanced. I'm very impressed with the way that it handles itself on a twisty bit of road like this. The thing is, you're going to get that from the faster 2.5 litre petrol model just as easily as you're going to get it from this hybrid. So there's no advantage to buying this when it comes to the way that it drives, as far as I see. So while the normal Forester is a very good thing to drive, and this hybrid model is for the most part too, unfortunately it's the drivetrain that lets it down. The electric part of that hybrid system kind of feels a bit tokenistic and half-hearted, and not as well thought out and developed as what you'd get in a Toyota.
The other issue it has against it is its price. At nearly 40 grand for this base model and 46 for the range topper, it costs a noticeable $4,500 more than the equivalent 2.5 litre petrol model. And, given the relatively meagre fuel savings, the takeaway here is a pretty straightforward one. While there's nothing exactly wrong with how this thing drives, and it does save some fuel like promised, you're much better off saving your money and buying the regular Forester for now at least.